In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone, for joining another Sunset series for the Eastham 400 program. Today we have ecologist Stephen Smith, who has been working with the Cape Cod National Seashore since 2002.
Hi, thanks very much. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the vulnerability of salt marshes on Cape Cod National Seashore to sea level rise, and sort of, how marshes have changed in response to the stressor in the recent past, their present state, and what their future trajectory might be. So just an overview of salt marshes. Tidal marshes form in sheltered areas that are protected from excessive wind, waves, and currents. And in that kind of quiet environment that allows for sediments to settle out and shoaling of sediments to happen, salt marshes can form. And once the plants are established in that area, then they tend to trap additional sediments, and the marsh builds up upon itself and can form. And on Cape Cod National Seashore, often the largest extent of marshes are formed behind barrier islands and spits. Salt marshes are really, really important to both flora and fauna and people. So this is just a partial list of all the different types of wildlife that occur in salt marshes. As I said, only a partial list, and much of what ends up on our plate when we go out to seafood dinner on Cape Cod has spent either part or all of its time in a salt marsh, or is dependent upon it in some regard. Salt marshes are extremely productive ecosystems, meaning that they photosynthesize at high rates and produce a lot of plant material during the season, and they're even more productive than a tropical rainforest, if you can believe that. So really important ecosystems along our coastlines. In salt marshes, the salty, flooded conditions limits the ability of microbes to decompose dead plant matter. So what happens in salt marshes is that they grow roots, and then those roots, after they die in the wintertime, they don't really decompose. They stay there because it's hard for microbes to decompose it. And as a result, you get a lot of buildup, accumulation of this organic matter termed peat. And on the right-hand side, you can see a core of this almost all organic matter in salt marshes. It can be many meters deep. And in this way, they bury carbon that they've sequestered from the atmosphere, used in photosynthesis to produce plant biomass, and it doesn't interact with the atmosphere anymore. So they ameliorate, in that sense, some degree of climate change, of carbon emissions. They also provide many services to us as humans. They buffer our coastline from erosion. They play a role in filtering out groundwater pollutants before they run into our nearshore coastal waters. They they provide storm surge protection, export organic matter to adjacent habitats. They're, as I said before, a critical habitat for a variety of flora and fauna, and they provide humans with abundant recreational activities, and they're valued for their aesthetic qualities as well. Okay, so probably the most important stressor on salt marshes worldwide these days is sea level rise. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, sea level was chugging along rising at about 1 millimeter per year. And then after that, it has been slowly accelerating, such that current rates of sea level rise, at least as measured at Nantucket Harbor, is about 3.8 millimeters per year, and projected rates are up to 11 millimeters per year by 2100. The problem is our marshes are not building up vertically very fast. So As I alluded to before, when you have production of roots, they don't decompose, and that root material just keeps building upon every year of growth. And in that way, the marsh can accrete vertically, but that rate of accretion is not keeping up with sea level rise. And that is the problem. We do measure rates of accretion by these fancy instruments called surface elevation tables. We've measured over a 20-year record, our marsh is accreting at about 1 to 2.8 millimeters per year. And as I said, sea level rise in Nantucket is way beyond that. So that's a problem for marshes. They will essentially drown in place if they don't have a place to migrate to. So just some visual illustrations about how salt marsh vegetation has changed in Cape Cod National Seashore marshes over time. Basically, we've seen really big species composition shifts. And primarily in the high marsh habitat, which is the part of the marsh that occurs from about mean high water to spring high water. It's usually a different type of vegetation. In our case, mostly salt marsh hay or Spartina patens, which looks like that. And that's disappearing rapidly. It is much more sensitive to flooding than the low marsh species, Spartina alterniflora, or cordgrass. And in these aerial photos, you can see the extent of the high marsh as this very light color, as opposed to low marsh, which is a different species and is the darker color. And this is a picture of Middle Meadow out on Wellfleet. You can see how much high marsh has disappeared over time. And we did this, digital analysis using GIS technology and to calculate how much loss of the high marsh we've seen over various time periods. And you can see here that in the gut marsh in Wellfleet out on Great Island, we've lost about 42% of the high marsh habitat. Middle Meadow, for example, about 48%. And this is the same, you can see the same pattern happening all over the Cape Cod. So this is a result of sea level rise and the stress on high marsh habitat to flooding, and that's why it's disappearing and being replaced by low marsh Spartina alterniflora. And you can see, if you go out and walk around these marshes at the seaward edge of the high marsh, you can see where this is happening. And a typical symptom of flooding stress is this hummocking pattern where you get a lot of open space between these clumps of high marsh Spartina patens vegetation. And that's a very characteristic indicator of flooding stress.
Thank you, Steve, for that presentation, and we'll be back tomorrow night with the second part.
My name is Joanna Hollick. Thank you for your support of the Sunset Series and Eastham 400. If you're interested in supporting Eastham 400 efforts by purchasing commemorative items, we do have several items for sale on our website, eastham400.org. We are selling gold foil First Encounter ornaments, t-shirts with the Eastham 400 logo, and montages made by a local artist. The ornaments feature an image of the shallop and come with a special description card. The t-shirts are available in light blue, navy, and ash gray, and in sizes adult small through 3XL. The montage depicts watercolor images of important historic and well-known landmarks around the town of Eastham. Each of these items are $20. Thank you.